Hello everybody and welcome to Disney World Playlists. Y'all liked the last one, so I'm going to give you some more. This is a series in which I basically take a general theme or idea and I kind of create like a mini itinerary out of it so that, you could, in theory, go around the parks for a day and sort of ride all the rides and eat at all the places that sort of, I feel, encapsulate that idea. Now, last time we did Indiana Jones, we went to a bunch of rides that reminded me of Indiana Jones. This week, we're going to take it away from a specific property, and we're going to go to a more general idea. And this week's idea is video games. That's right, I play video games. You probably all play video games. Maybe you don't. But I am a gamer, and I love playing games, and it was really fun to come up with a list of places to eat and rides to ride that reminded me of video games, or I felt like captured the spirit of video games. So our first attraction is here in Hollywood Studios. Let's go check it out. So we are here over at Toy Story's Midway Mania. Now this is a no-brainer. I feel like this is the one everybody would have picked on their playlist. For the reason that it virtually is a video game. You sit in the vehicle, you have your little shooting gun thing, and you go through all these screens where you have to shoot at targets. It's very interactive. It's got a score. It is very much a game. And so it's about the closest I think you can get in Disney World to just flat out playing a video game while being on an attraction. And on top of that, it's Toy Story. So you've got that sort of toy element there that I feel like really makes it feel reminiscent of video games, even if it's not, referenced very much in the movie series. I think just by putting you in that like mind space of toys and your childhood, it kind of gets you in the video game mood. Then we hop on over to Epcot to Future World to Mission Space, which personally not one of my favorite rides, but I feel like it is definitely deserving of being on a playlist for video games in Disney, mainly because even though it's, I think, very shallow and very on the surface, there is interactivity involved with this attraction. If you've never been on it, it's sort of like a centrifuge attraction where you're spinning around, but you're placed in front of all of these sort of controls to mimic you being in a spaceship that's headed to Mars, and it does prompt you to interact with this interface, whether it's pushing a button or pulling on a joystick, and that sort of cues you up to the next stage of the flight. And there are 4 in total, and so everybody who's on there gets to feel like they play a part. Now I say it's sort of shallow because ultimately if you don't interact, it'll just take over for you and make the interaction, so really it doesn't matter one way or another how much you interact, but the fact that it's in there sort of adds to the immersion. And that's sort of one of those things that you see a lot in video games. A lot of people talk about, you think about a series like the Telltale series, and a lot of people will make the argument, well, no matter what decision you make, it sort of all goes to the same ending anyway, and you can kind of see that here. And so it is definitely a topic that is talked about a lot in video games. And just by the nature of getting to push buttons and pull on joysticks and stuff, it does feel way more interactive, and that's why I sort of, jumped to think about it when I was thinking about video games in Disney World. Then we head back to Hollywood Studios for lunch, and as you can tell just by the bouncing back and forth, this is obviously not a very realistic itinerary, but here we are for lunch at, where else could you have lunch? Toy Story Pizza Planet. It makes perfect sense. This is the pizza place from the Toy Story series that is a sort of pizza place arcade hybrid. And sure enough, the Pizza Planet in Hollywood Studios has all these arcade games. And so, of course, you think video games in Disney World and eating, like, this is the perfect mix because it's food and video games. Arcade games, obviously a little more antiquated. But hopefully they'll see a resurgence with things like virtual reality and the Oculus Rift and these giant, like, big rigs that you can't really own at home. And so if you want to play some video games at Disney World, a lot of the hotels have their own arcades. But if you want to play some video games at Disney World and also, get your pizza on, then you head on over to Pizza Planet here in Hollywood Studios. Next up, we head back to Future World. A lot of back and forth between Epcot and Hollywood Studios, I noticed. And we're going to head on over to the Seas, where we are going to check out Turtle Talk with Crush. Now, if you've never been to Turtle Talk with Crush, it's actually really cool. It's more of a show than an attraction, but the idea is a bunch of kids, you sit in the theater, you got the parents too. I've gone as an adult, I enjoyed it. And there's sort of just like a back and forth between Crush, the turtle from Finding Nemo, and all the people in the audience. And what's really cool is that Crush is animated CGI, but he is actually interacting with the people. He's having a dialogue and a conversation. So they have somebody, you know, doing the voice of Crush in the back, and they have a sophisticated enough animation system that, you know, they can animate him on the fly so that he's interacting with these people, and it seems like, you know, you're having a real conversation with Crush. And the reason I picked it for this playlist is, again, I think the core theme when you think about video games is interactivity. You know, this is an attraction where you're interacting with the people on the screen, and I think that's really cool, and that adds this, you know, it's not a game per se, but that interactivity does, I think, one-up it as far as an attraction goes. Now, an honorable mention here would be the Laugh Factory, the Monsters Inc. It works with a similar style where you have that sort of back and forth between the characters on stage and the people in the audience. I guess I just went with Turtle Talk because I like Crush more than I like Mike Wazowski. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know why I picked it. I think it'd be pretty interchangeable. And maybe if you wanted a longer playlist, you could throw that on there as well. So that is why I would go check out Turtle Talk with Crush. Then we'd walk on over from the seas back to Spaceship Earth, where I think this maybe not as clear of a reason why it would end up on a video game Disney World playlist, but I think there are multiple reasons. Now, one, to continue the theme of interactivity, there's that interactive element where you sort of decide all these things at the end of the attraction on the touch screen, what you value most in life, and it puts together this little animation paired with the picture that they take at the beginning of the ride, and it creates a specifically tailored animation for you. And so on one level, there's the interactivity of, like, you're putting in choices that do have an actual direct outcome of the video you're going to see at the end. But beyond that, I also think it's very important for this playlist because I think it's a great teaching moment, because they've added in the recent, you know, refurbishment a scene that's supposed to represent sort of the Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, Bill Gates era of, you know, people working in their garage to create sort of the birth of the personal computer. And I think that's important for this playlist because I think it's that specific push, and especially the bit before it with just, you know, the growth of computers that we have to thank for video games. Like, we wouldn't have video games on the level we did today without a personal computer, or without just the improvements that we have with, you know, transistors and circuits and computers as a whole. You know, that we owe, you know, we owe that stuff, you know, for video games' existence. So I think both in a historical context is important for this playlist, and I also think that little scene at the end where you put together a little movie just sort of, it's a good way of you know, and I never even thought about it until just now, but it's a good way of living the improvements created by the scenes that you were just moments ago driving through. You know, going through that scene in the 70s where they're putting together a computer in the garage, probably weren't even thinking about the sort of technology that we have today, and yet here we are using it to put together these custom animations. So I think it's very important that Spaceship Earth is on the video game playlist for Disney World. And then for dinner, we're going to go ahead and grab some corn dogs over at Casey's Corner in the Magic Kingdom. Now, this is a weird, far-off choice, I'm not gonna lie. There is really nothing video game related here. If you've ever been to Casey's Corner, it's more like an old-timey sort of like I guess like a baseball-esque shop. You got corn dogs and popcorn and stuff like that, like very old school Americana food. And I guess the reason I picked it is because of what I just said there. It's like that baseball feel. So yeah, not video games, but there are games involved here, and it does give me that feel of, like, what's it say here? Famous hot dogs, right? You got your famous hot dogs. It's not the digital interactive kind, but it does remind me of, like, going to a baseball game or just being out during, like, very nice sport weather. And hey, sports video games are a big part of the video game ecosystem these days. And honestly, I couldn't really think of many other restaurants that had more of a video game focus, so it was a bit of a stretch. But, you know, I think it's a cool way to, I don't know, respect the fact that before video games, we just had regular games, and we still have those games, and they're called sports, and we have board games. And, you know, being a video gamer, I'm surprised that it took me so long, but I eventually ended up getting into board games and role-playing games and stuff like that. And I have a great appreciation for it now, because it shows that even without the technology, you can appreciate the challenge of a game. And I guess we can all appreciate corn dogs, right? This is also where I had my first corn dog ever in my entire life. It's crazy, I know. So we'll load up on popcorn and corn dogs and hot dogs, and then we'll head on over to the final attraction for the playlist today. And that is here in Future World again. A lot of Epcot, but that makes sense, right? Future World, technology, video games, it all sort of rolls up together. And we are here at Innovations East, wow. Innovations East, and it's a specific attraction over here. I don't think it's open on MC Magic, but it is the Sum of All Thrills. And what the Sum of All Thrills is essentially it is a roller coaster simulator. It's got sort of one of those jib arms that you strap yourself into, and it spins around and flips around and does all this crazy stuff while you're looking at a screen of a roller coaster, sort of mimic the excitement of a roller coaster. And what's really awesome about it, and partially why it's on my list, or I should say a large part of why it's on my list, is you design the roller coaster. You get to pick the track layout and the speed and the intensity of it all. And so it definitely has an interactive element to it, right? That affects the final outcome of the attraction. There's the digital element of not only, you know, putting the ride together, but of also experiencing the ride digitally through like the screen in the simulator. I think it's just a very kind of future forward type of attraction, and that interactivity makes it feel not like a video game because there's no way to lose, but that interactivity again just sort of has that reminder of, you know, of video games and how they all work. So it's why I picked it. And I think Test Track with the new refurbishment sort of would also be a good alternative or addition to this playlist, because similarly you do get to digitally design the car that you're going to be riding in. Anyway, that's my Disney World playlist for video games. This is what I would do, I guess, if I wanted to experience or be reminded of video games. But what I want to know is, what would you put on your playlist for video games? Maybe there's an attraction or place to eat that I totally forgot. I would love to hear it. Maybe you think some of these are great choices. Maybe you think some of them are awful choices. Let me know in the comments below. And if you have an idea for a playlist theme that you would like me to jump on in a future episode, or you'd like Christine to tackle in a future episode, also feel free to let me know in the comments below. You could also reach me on Twitter at RobPlays. And if you like this series, this new series, let me know, because that's how I sort of decide whether I'm going to do more of them. And also feel free to subscribe, because, you know, then you'll get them straight to your inbox. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Have a fantastic week. Whatever you're doing, make the most of it. And I'll see you next time for the next Walt Disney World playlists. Bye, everybody.